There's someone in every gathering who perceives everything. He's not the person making the most noise. He's not the one standing center stage, craving laughter, desperate for every eye to settle on him. He's not constantly glancing at his device every half minute, afraid of quiet, afraid of being disconnected. No, this man sits peacefully in the emptiness. He speaks sparingly. He watches intently. And if you observe carefully, if you truly focus, you'll detect something disturbing about him. He doesn't require being there. He doesn't require the collective. He doesn't require affirmation. And because he doesn't require them, they cannot manipulate him. Society has assigned this man a label. They brand him a loner. They label him antisocial. They classify him as introverted, strange, or damaged. But the architects of power, the marketers, the leaders, the controllers, they possess a different label for him: threatening. They're afraid of him. Because a man comfortable in isolation is a man who's conquered his own consciousness. And a man who's conquered his own consciousness can no longer be enslaved by the artificial dopamine and manufactured anxieties that society deploys to control the masses. Most individuals shatter when isolation finds them. The quiet devours them completely. They begin to spiral. They sense the walls contracting. They grab for the television, the alcohol, the device, anything to silence the voice of their own consciousness. But the threatening man, he enters solitude like he's entering his personal throne chamber. Today, we're going to dissect your understanding of reality. We're going to examine why you've been programmed to dread isolation, why the system fears your solitude, and how accepting the emptiness transforms you from a piece into a player. This isn't about experiencing loneliness. Loneliness is a disease. Solitude is a tactical choice. And if you remain with me, by the conclusion you'll grasp why history's most powerful individuals didn't merely accept being alone. They insisted upon it. Let's begin with the deception. The deception you've absorbed since childhood. Humans are communal creatures. You've encountered this claim countless times. It justifies everything. It's why you're pushed into collaborative assignments. It's why shared workspaces exist. It's why if you dine by yourself, others regard you with sympathy. They inform you that isolation equals suffering, that being separated is punishment. In correctional facilities, isolation chambers represent the harshest penalty below execution. Why? Because for the typical unprepared consciousness, being isolated with oneself equals agony. But question yourself, who profits from you fearing solitude? Consider the economic system. A man content in isolation requires very little. He doesn't require purchasing the latest vehicle to impress his peers. He doesn't require spending thousands on fashion to integrate into a community he doesn't value. He doesn't require overpaying for beverages at establishments just to validate his existence. The economic system depends on your insecurities. It depends on your frantic desire to fit in. If you're satisfied with yourself, you're a terrible customer. But this runs deeper than commerce. It concerns dominance. Collective behavior is the simplest method to control human actions. It's termed herding. If I want to manipulate a sheep, I don't require placing a chain on it. I simply frighten the remaining flock and guide them in a single direction. The lone sheep follows because it's terrified of abandonment. This is the evolutionary trap. Millennia ago, if you were expelled from the community, you perished. You starved or became prey. Your mind contains an ancient primitive circuit that signals danger whenever you distance yourself from the masses. Society exploits this circuit. It maintains you in perpetual social fear. What's their opinion of me? Am I dressed appropriately? Did I speak foolishly? Why didn't they respond to my content? These questions form the bars of your confinement. They maintain your compliance. They maintain your mediocrity. They maintain your safety. But the threatening man, he reversed the exploit. He examined that ancient fear and recognized it was an apparition. In today's world, you won't perish if you abandon the community. You won't starve if you oppose the majority. Once you comprehend that the fear of isolation is an evolutionary flaw, not actual danger, you become invisible to their manipulation systems. You become the phantom in the system. Observe wildlife programming. Examine how hunted animals function. Deer, zebras, fish schools, they cluster tightly. They're noisy. They're perpetually communicating with each other. Their protection lies in quantity. Their complete strategy is don't notice me, notice us. Now examine the hunters, the tiger, the eagle, the bear. They pursue alone. They operate in quiet. They don't require a collective to confirm their power. Their power originates from their independence. This is the core distinction between the agreeable man and the threatening man. The agreeable man is hunted. He's afraid of confrontation. He's afraid of disturbing the collective. He alters his character to match his surroundings. He's a chameleon, but not strategically, fearfully. He depletes his resources attempting to control everyone else's impression of him. The threatening man is predatory in concentration, not aggressive but concentrated. When you're isolated, you conserve your resources. You're not hemorrhaging power maintaining a facade. Consider how much resources you squander daily just performing. The artificial grins, the superficial conversation, the agreement when you disagree, the laughter at humor that isn't humorous. It's a gradual drain on your essence. When you select isolation, you seal that drain. You recover that resource and you can channel it towards something that genuinely matters. Your purpose, your physical form, your financial situation, your consciousness. This is why they choose isolation. It's not because they despise people. It's because they treasure their own power excessively to waste it on performance. Machiavelli, the architect of dark tactics, composed his masterwork, The Prince in Banishment. He was removed from his role, expelled from the courts, and compelled to exist on farmland. He was isolated, and in that quiet, he didn't weep. He didn't plead for mercy. He refined his consciousness. He examined human nature with frigid surgical accuracy that remains studied 5 centuries later. If he'd remained in the court, distracted by celebrations and conflicts, he would have been merely another forgotten administrator. Solitude rendered him eternal. Here's the section where we must be harsh. Most men don't select solitude because they're fragile. They evade it because they're afraid. Blaise Pascal, the French mathematician and thinker, stated, "All of humanity's difficulties originate from man's incapacity to remain quietly in a space isolated." Why is it so difficult? Because when the disturbance ceases, the reality begins. When you eliminate the distractions, no streaming, no audio, no browsing, no speaking, you're confronted with the only individual you can't escape, yourself. And for most individuals, that's a frightening encounter. In the quiet, you perceive the thoughts you've been burying. You recall the defeats you attempted to erase. You sense the distance between who you are and who you recognize you should be. The quiet functions like a mirror. A high-resolution, unrelenting mirror that reveals every wound, every imperfection, every vulnerability. This is the void. The typical man senses the void expanding and he spirals. He instantly grabs for his device. He contacts a companion. He activates the screen. He saturates the quiet with garbage because the garbage feels safer than the reality. But the threatening man, he remains in the void. He stares into the darkness until the darkness surrenders. He utilizes the solitude to conduct an examination of his essence. Why am I enraged? Why do I pursue validation from individuals I don't respect? What do I genuinely believe versus what I was instructed to believe? This procedure is agonizing. It's like fracturing a bone to realign it, but it's the sole path to genuine power. Carl Jung termed this the shadow work, incorporating the dark fragments of yourself. You cannot accomplish this at a celebration. You cannot accomplish this in a digital conversation. You can only accomplish this in the profound, oppressive quiet of solitude. Once you've confronted your own monsters in the darkness, nothing in illumination can frighten you. What is a superior shouting at you compared to the confrontation you've experienced with your own essence? What is a woman's rejection compared to the self-acceptance you've created in the flames of your own isolation? Nothing. When you no longer dread your own presence, you become resistant to external threats. You become uncancelable in your own consciousness because you understand that even if the entire world abandons you, you'll survive. You're in excellent company. Let's transition from theory to strategy. Dark psychology instructs us that intelligence is dominance. In any exchange, the individual speaking is surrendering dominance. The individual observing is accumulating it. When you're perpetually surrounded by others, perpetually conversing, perpetually participating, you're revealing your position. You're informing the world what you desire, what frightens you, what you intend to execute. You're foreseeable. The man who chooses isolation is a secure vault. Nobody understands his next action. Nobody understands his pressure points. Nobody understands his vulnerabilities. This renders him impossible to control. Consider a business negotiation. The individual who speaks excessively fails. He exposes his nervousness. He saturates the quiet because he's anxious. The individual who reclines, remains silent, and is comfortable with the interruption, he succeeds. Solitude conditions you to be comfortable with the interruption. When you invest days or weeks isolated, your consciousness transforms. Your dopamine systems recalibrate. You cease requiring perpetual excitement. You cultivate a high-capacity awareness. You begin detecting things others overlook. Subtle expressions, vocal variations, the things individuals don't articulate. While the masses are occupied creating disturbance, the isolated man is analyzing the surroundings. He perceives the strings on the marionettes. This is why the most threatening men are frequently the quietest. They aren't timid. They're pursuing intelligence. They're constructing a psychological map of the battlefield while everyone else is treating existence like entertainment. Nikola Tesla, Isaac Newton, the Unabomber. Yes, we're addressing this. Regardless of ethics, examine the capacity for influence. These men invested years in isolation. They constructed systems, concepts, and devices that transformed the direction of reality. Tesla allegedly stated, "The consciousness is more acute and precise in seclusion and continuous solitude. No massive laboratory is required in which to contemplate." Innovation flourishes in seclusion, liberated from external forces impacting us to the inventive consciousness. Society desires you to collaborate. It desires you to cooperate. It desires you to function in shared environments. Why? Because if you're perpetually cooperating, you're perpetually declining to the average. You're diluting your excellence with the collective's mediocrity. The threatening concepts, the ones that collapsed empires, the ones that rewrote science, the ones that generate multi-generational wealth, they're conceived in the silent chamber. If you desire to be average, attend the social event. If you desire to be threatening, go to the wilderness. We exist in the era of the collective consciousness. Digital platforms have linked our minds into a unified, pulsating entity of fury and uniformity. It's a digital organism. If you're connected continuously, you don't possess your own thoughts. You possess downloaded thoughts. You're enraged because the system instructed you to be enraged. You're enthusiastic because the pattern instructed you to be enthusiastic. You're a connection in a network analyzing data for another entity. The man who chooses isolation disconnects. He separates. And in that separation, he reclaims his independence. Have you ever observed that after several days absent from the broadcasts and digital platforms, the world seems altered? The pressure diminishes. The rage dissolves. You comprehend that 99% of the difficulties society broadcasts about aren't genuine. They're illusions projected onto a display to maintain you engaged and afraid. When you distance yourself, you perceive the matrix for what it is. This is why they label the isolated man insane, because he doesn't participate in the collective delusion. If everyone is observing a wall perceiving a projection of a creature and one man rotates and perceives the projector, the masses will destroy him. They'll declare he is insane. They'll declare he is threatening. He is threatening. He is threatening to the delusion. You must comprehend that your focus is the most precious resource on Earth. Trillions of currency are invested annually to capture it. Systems are engineered by the most intelligent minds on the planet to maintain you browsing, to maintain you observing, to prevent you from being isolated. Selecting solitude is an act of defiance. It's a proclamation of conflict against the focus economy. It's stating, my consciousness belongs to me. Let's descend deeper into the darkness. Usually men are compelled into solitude by catastrophe, a separation, a financial collapse, a deception, the loss of someone cherished. The world disintegrates and they discover themselves standing in the destruction isolated. There are two directions here. Direction A is the casualty. He utilizes the isolation to decay. He consumes alcohol. He feels self-pity. He replays the trauma repeatedly until it becomes his character. He becomes the isolated elderly man saturated with remorse. Direction B is the transformer. The threatening man utilizes the intensity of that agony to create a new identity. Solitude functions as a compression chamber. Without the escape mechanism of conversing with others, the emotional force accumulates. If you're fragile, you detonate. If you're powerful, you convert. You capture that rage, that sorrow, that anguish, and you direct it into labor. You direct it into physical training. You direct it into a strategy. The most frightening version of a man is the one who has forfeited everything and chosen not to perish. 1. He possesses nothing remaining to forfeit. And a man with nothing to forfeit is the only man who is genuinely liberated. When you observe a man who chooses isolation, you frequently observe someone who has reconstructed himself from nothing. He understands that the masses didn't rescue him when he was drowning. He rescued himself. So why would he require the masses now? He has comprehended that rescue isn't arriving. And instead of that rendering him sorrowful, it rendered him powerful. It rendered him independent. Independence is the supreme threat to the system. The system requires you to be reliant. It requires you to require the authorities, the physician, the leader, the financial institution, the employer. The man who can repair his own dwelling, cultivate his own nourishment, contemplate his own thoughts, and mend his own spirit, he is a malfunction. He is a defect in the reliance apparatus. They cannot intimidate him with poverty because he understands how to exist with minimal resources. They cannot intimidate him with exclusion because he is content isolated. He is the anomaly. Let's discuss worth. This isn't philosophy. This is economics, supply and demand. The primary principle of worth is rarity. If there's excessive quantities of something, it becomes worthless. Sand is everywhere, it's valueless. Gold is concealed, scarce, difficult to obtain. Conflicts are initiated over it. Now apply this to your existence. Most men are sand. They're everywhere. They're in every message, every response section, every celebration, every digital conversation. They're perpetually accessible. You message them, they respond in 3 seconds. You summon them, they arrive prematurely. They're frantic to be utilized. And because their availability is unlimited, their worth is nothing. The threatening man comprehends the devaluation of existence. He understands that the more he is observed, the less he is valued. Robert Greene, the creator of the 48 Principles of Dominance, established this principle 16. Utilize absence to elevate value and admiration. When you retreat, you generate a vacuum. Individuals are habituated to disturbance. When you become silent, they concentrate. They begin to question, where did he disappear? What is he executing? Is he frustrated? Did he discover something superior? This is the dominance of the phantom. By choosing solitude, by being inaccessible, the threatening man activates the collective's fear. He becomes a prize to be obtained, not a resource to be exploited. Consider the public figures or authorities who are perpetually posting, perpetually conducting conversations. You become exhausted of them. You perceive their imperfections. They become human, tedious, irritating. Now consider the ones who vanish for years, the ones who exist behind barriers, the ones who only communicate when they possess something revolutionary to articulate. When they enter a space, the atmosphere transforms. This is the tactical advantage of solitude. It's not merely about mental tranquility. It's about advantage. When you're comfortable isolated, you possess the capacity to abandon any negotiation. And the man who can abandon is the man who possesses all the advantage. If you require the transaction, you fail. If you require the woman, you fail. If you require the employment, you fail. But if you're content in your solitude, if you understand that abandoning means returning to your refuge, to your tranquility, to your own domain, then you cannot be undervalued. You examine the proposition, you examine the disrespect, and you simply rotate and disappear. That is dominance. We must shatter another delusion. The social structure. We're instructed there are alphas and betas. The alpha commands the collective. The beta follows. This is an ancient binary method of perceiving the world. It's a confinement for your consciousness, because even the alpha is enslaved. He is enslaved to the community. He must perpetually protect his position. He must perpetually demonstrate he is powerful. He is confined in the competition just as much as the beta. He is simply executing a different character. The threatening man, the isolated man, is not an alpha, and he certainly isn't a beta. He is the designer. He doesn't participate in the competition. He exists beyond it. While the alphas and betas are battling over fragments of recognition, battling over who obtains the premium workspace or the most engagement, the designer is constructing his own universe. He comprehends that the structure is artificial. It's a fabrication engineered to maintain men battling each other so they don't examine upward at the controllers. When you invest time isolated, you cease caring about recognition. Recognition is a social resource. It only possesses worth if you believe in the society that distributes it. If I present you with 1,000,000 units of game currency, you're wealthy in the game, but distance yourself from the board and you're grasping paper. Social recognition is game currency. The man who chooses isolation distances himself from the board. He begins accumulating genuine resource capability. Can you genuinely execute things? Intelligence. Do you comprehend how the world operates? Resources. Do you possess your time? Tranquility. Can you rest at night? The masses label him a sigma to attempt to categorize him, to attempt to integrate him back into their classification system, but he rejects the category. He isn't attempting to be impressive. He is attempting to be liberated. He examines the popular gathering and perceives a collective of nervous individuals afraid of forfeiting their positions. And he walks past them to consume outside. Now you might be contemplating, but humans require connection. If I'm isolated, won't I be miserable? Here is the contradiction. The man who cherishes isolation possesses the most profound relationships. How? Because he possesses a filter. Most individuals are social gluttons. They consume individuals like junk nourishment. They possess hundreds of companions. But if they were in the medical facility at 3 in the morning, who would answer the device? Maybe one, probably none. Their relationships are founded on closeness and ease. We function together, so we are companions. We consume beverages at the same establishment, so we are companions. This is fragile. The threatening man establishes a high cost for his presence. Because he enjoys his own presence, he will not exchange it for tedious, destructive, or inferior presence. If he is going to invest time with you, you must be superior than his solitude. And that is a high standard. So he possesses fewer companions, maybe 2 or 3. But those connections, they are iron. They are founded on shared principles, shared purposes, mutual value. They are not founded on requiring someone to eliminate time with. They are founded on constructing empires together. When 2 threatening men encounter, they recognize each other instantly. There is no posturing, no artificial laughter, just acknowledgement. You understand the void too. Yes, I inhabit there. And in that moment, an alliance is created that is more powerful than any superficial collective. Solitude heals loneliness because it eliminates the individuals who render you lonely. There is nothing lonelier than being in a space saturated with individuals who don't comprehend you. The threatening man eliminates the dead weight. He trims the tree, and what remains develops stronger. I informed you I wouldn't deceive you. I'm not marketing you a fantasy. Becoming this man, the man who chooses isolation, arrives with a substantial cost. The transition is harsh. When you begin distancing, when you begin selecting the training facility over the establishment, the literature over the celebration, the quiet over the rumor, individuals will assault you. They will interpret it personally. You think you're superior than us. You've transformed. You're tedious now. They will attempt to drag you back down like creatures in a container. They sense your elevation as a judgment on their stagnation, and for a period it will be frigid. You will forfeit companions. You will forfeit romantic partners. You might even forfeit family members who can't tolerate your new limitations. You will possess Saturday nights where you remain in your chamber and the quiet is overpowering. You will question if you executed an error. You will observe the digital stories of everyone enjoying themselves, and you will sense the sensation of missing out. This is the examination. The universe is questioning, how much do you desire this? Do you desire to be liberated, or do you just desire to be comfortable? Most men fail the examination. They return to the container. They apologize. They reintegrate, and they perish as mediocrities. But if you maintain the position, if you endure the cold, something transforms. The quiet ceases feeling vacant and begins feeling complete. The solitude ceases feeling like a confinement and begins feeling like a fortress. You cease missing the disturbance. You begin examining it with sympathy. You comprehend that what they label enjoyment is just distraction. What they label existing is just coping. And once you cross that boundary, you can never return. You have consumed the red pill. The food doesn't taste the same anymore because you understand it's artificial. So what is the compensation? Why traverse the darkness? Because on the opposite side of the void exists independence. Imagine awakening and not examining your device, not caring what the broadcasts articulate, not worrying about what your superior contemplates. Imagine walking down the pathway and sensing completely whole, requiring nothing from the individuals you pass. You are not pursuing validation. You are not pursuing focus. You are simply existing, advancing towards your own objectives with the force of a locomotive. This is the threatening tranquility. It is threatening because it cannot be interrupted. If they terminate you, you possess a strategy. If they abandon you, you possess yourself. If the world ignites, you possess a flame inside that burns more intensely. You become the eye of the storm. The chaos revolves around you, destroying everything fragile, but you remain motionless. History is composed by these men, the spiritual practitioners, the warriors, the philosophers, the creators. They comprehended that the supreme dominance is not dominance over others. It is dominance over oneself. And you cannot govern yourself if you are perpetually surrendering the remote control of your emotions to the masses. To be threatening is to be uncontrollable. And to be uncontrollable, you must be isolated. So I possess a question for you. When this presentation concludes and the display becomes black and the quiet floods back into your chamber, what will you execute? Will you spiral? Will you select the next presentation, instantly searching for the next dose of dopamine? Will you browse down to the responses to perceive what the collective contemplates before you create your own perspective? Or will you remain there? Will you permit the darkness to rest on your shoulders? Will you examine into the black mirror of your display and introduce yourself to the man examining back? The entrance is accessible. The masses are noisy, but the departure is right there. Distance yourself from the formation. Walk into the darkness. It's silent there. And in the silence, you might finally perceive the instruction you've been awaiting. If this expanded your awareness, comprehend this is only what I can reveal publicly. There are presentations I cannot publish for everyone. There are elements of dark psychology that I simply cannot address publicly on this platform without being suppressed or penalized. The system conceals the most powerful intelligence because it is engineered to maintain you asleep. Those principles exist behind the membership option. If you're still here, you're not like the others. Subscribe if you haven't. But if you desire what's concealed, select the membership option and enter the designer level. You will access exclusive, uncensored presentations that explore into the most profound sections of the human consciousness, control, protection, and shadow incorporation. Most won't. They choose the blue pill. That's the purpose. I'll see you there.